I don't know how many people are going to watch this. Most people will listen, though.
Okay.
But we're both good-looking people, so maybe. Yeah. Who knows? I need a haircut, so.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
Although I do have full send on here, but that's...
I don't even know what that means.
You don't know what full send means?
No, I have no clue.
It's like giving it 100% or going hardcore.
Oh, okay.
So, like, when you're with the band, you go full send.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. We'll get started.
Yeah. Start.
Hey, everyone. I'm Bradley Schneller. This is With That Being Said, a Rue Fitness podcast. Oh, it's not With That Being Said. That's my other co-host. This is our community profile. I have Ryan Thibodaux here from the Bucktown All-Stars,
Sure.
Storyville Family Dentistry, Tiger Ragtag Marching Band.
Mm-hmm.
Am I missing anything else?
I don't think so.
Semi-professional endurance athlete?
Dabble.
Dabble a little bit. Awesome. Well, thanks for having us here. The reason we got Ryan on the show, not only is really big into endurance sports and training for that, he also is a regular with our massage therapy company with Jamie. So we appreciate you having us here. Cool. I want to get started. It's Mardi Gras. As you can see, I got a Mardi Gras shirt on, and then I got my old Tiger Band jacket.
Amen. Hey, là-bas.
Yeah. So super excited. What do we have going on, you and I?
We are organizing a reunion of sorts of Tiger Band alumni to get together and march the Crew of Thoth 2020.
Hell yeah. I'm super excited.
I am too. What started as a plan for 30 people has evolved very rapidly into 200 plus and counting, which is nuts.
I told Ryan I thought the goal would be like 300, like be bigger than Tiger Band, which I feel like we could play louder than Tiger Band. But
probably so.
No disrespect.
Yeah.
So, you know, you organized the National Championship Band.
Mm-hmm.
We marched from the Warehouse District through the French Quarter the day before the National Championship. Go Tigers. How'd you get that together?
You know, people asked if that was something that I just threw together, and I'd done that a couple of other times for other games. And once on campus, and every time that LSU has played in New Orleans, I put together some form of alumni band, or at least I put the invite out.
Okay.
And with each one, it's grown, and some momentum and the reputation has grown. So this one, though it looked like it was an overnight success and done very organically, it was probably 8 years in the making, and the word has definitely got out.
That's awesome. So now I feel like we have a thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep going. Do we have an Instagram account?
We do.
Tiger Ragtag.
Tiger Ragtag.
Tiger Ragtag. Awesome. Did you get any complaints from us marching around from some other older band members?
No, nothing.
That's good.
I know. I thought I would.
Other than the flack about playing neck.
Yeah, and I like that. That's a little.
I like it too.
I like a little bit of static and rub. I think if you're making everybody happy, then you're missing the point.
Or if you're trying to make everyone happy, you're making no one happy.
Exactly.
That's the saying. I
believe. And it became a talking point for the group, even though it was 1% of what we delivered on that entire experience. It certainly made for a talking point, and it still is a talking point moving forward.
So how did you get approached to do Thoth?
That's an interesting story. So we created a lot of interest through social media videos of us for the national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, LSU having won the game, that momentum continued in the right direction. And the word went out on social media as a couple of questions like, hey, have you thought of doing a parade? Hey,
I said something to you.
Yeah, are you guys going to do a parade? And I know a few people through the Bucktown All-Stars in the Mardi Gras industry. So I kind of threw out some feelers. And I threw it out, one, to a good buddy of mine, Brett Patron, who's the founder of Sixth and Stompers.
Yep.
And I threw it out to another buddy of mine, Stephen Lundgren, who's marched with Tiger Ragtag a few times. And he's a family of Mardi Gras not only historians, but involvement, founded a crew. He's very involved in Metairie and New Orleans Mardi Gras. And because I wanted some real feedback on whether or not we could pull it off and whether or not it was worth it. And so they all said that you have to do it, was pretty much the reply.
That's awesome.
So then what happened was I came back into the office, and my office manager happens to work part-time with next year's King of Thoth. And I believe his first name is Corey. And he reached out and said, hey, I'm an LSU grad. I loved what you did. I was out there, and I want y'all to march next year when I'm the king. And I said, well, that sounds great, but the momentum is in this year,
Right.
and we should do it this year. And he said, no, we can't make it happen. The window's too short. We've already booked all of our bands. It's impossible. And I said, well, run it by a few people and see what happens. So he did and came back and said, well, we've asked another band, which was never named, to stay home for the day and paid them anyway. So they got paid to stay home. And then they made room for Tiger Ragtag. So here we are.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that all happened in about 16 hours.
Damn.
Yeah. From the initial conversation to a few texts to it happened to be a lot of it is just timing. Those initial texts went out on a day of a TOEF. I guess it's a float lieutenant meeting where it was kind of pitched. The concept was pitched. Phones came out, YouTube videos. They were all, LSU had just won. It was the week after the national championship. There's a huge LSU contingent in the crew of TOEF.
Right.
So they're all sitting around looking at videos. Oh, did you see this video? Did you see this? Oh, look at this band. Look at this and this. Oh, these guys want to march in TOEF. And then next thing you know, here we are.
Well, I'm super excited. So y'all, that is this coming Sunday. Well, for when this podcast releases.
Yeah.
Check us out. Parade starts at noon. It is the longest route in Mardi Gras. So starts at Henry Clay. And Chop goes down Henry Clay, takes a right on Magazine, and then all the way up to Napoleon and traditional route from there. So come check us out. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be behind float.
No, we don't know. Six or seven.
In the beginning.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait 65 floats. That's how long TOEF is for us to be there. So, cool. So you played in LSU's band. What year was that? Do you mind?
I was 92 through 96.
All right.
So we call it the lean years, and this was the transition from Curly Holman to Jerry DiNardo.
Yikes.
There wasn't a lot of winning going on, and the thing that creates a lot of nostalgia for me is that Tiger Band obviously starts our commitment for the day very early, and we're the last to leave the stadium as a group. And then we go and review film after. So
eat sandwiches and cookies.
Yeah, and hang out. And the highlight of the day for many people in Tiger Stadium was the band's presence because the football team was just abysmal. There was a quarterback controversy back then. It was because there were no good quarterbacks, of course. Right. And even on road games, it was the anticipation of Tiger Band arriving was almost bigger than the anticipation of the football team arriving because that's how lean it was back then.
What instrument did you play?
Trumpet.
That's what I thought. So how did you go from there to creating the Bucktown All-Stars?
I was approached as I was graduating from Jesuit. I was still a senior and wrapping up. I just accepted a scholarship to attend LSU, and some guys approached me who were Jesuit guys. They were a little bit older than me. They had played in the music industry in town in New Orleans while they were in high school, but mainly doing like kind of 80s prom stuff, they were like a prom band. And they wanted to get together and form more of a classic soul and R&B band, and they knew they needed some horn players to do that. And while I was at Jesuit, I played a lot of trumpet, competed a lot, and my name would get thrown out a lot. I think more people knew my name than actually knew me because they would hear it over announcements. Ryan Thibodaux did this, Ryan Thibodaux did that. So they picked up the phone and called me, and I was like, no, I'm not interested. Going to LSU, I'm not interested. And after 3 or 4 phone calls, they finally approached my mom and said, look, we really want Ryan to be in this band. And she says, well, it sounds really cool, but he's set on going to LSU and he's not going to be here. And they said, we're going to drop off some tapes, some cassette tapes of some of the music we want him to learn. So they knocked on the door, dropped off the tapes. I come home from Baton Rouge and there's a couple of cassette tapes with classic soul on it saying, this is the guys that approach you. So that was back in the summer of 92. And, at the time we were playing bar jobs around Tulane and Loyola.
So you played while you're at LSU?
Yeah.
And it was called the Bucktown All-Stars?
Bucktown All-Stars, yeah.
But so now you're the lead guy.
I'm one of 2 founding members of the band. And then my role has transitioned over the years. We have some guys internally that handle bookings and contracts and PR and all that stuff. I would say I'm kind of the more of the spark that kind of leads things. I'm not the lead voice. I'm not the lead singer. I'm not the lead spokesman of the band. But usually if you're at a performance, you'll notice the presence because of the energy.
So you're the face. of the band.
In some ways.
Yeah, I'm the face of Root.
Yeah.
I'm not the brains behind it. That's my wife.
Yeah. Right.
But I am who everyone associates it. No offense to anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the way it goes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Big personalities equal big presence. So
I think so.
Absolutely. Was there any what do you think was like your apex? Is it now? Did you what year did you peak?
I hope it's in about 5 years.
Okay. All right. So we're still growing.
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
I think so. Evolving. Musically, I competed a lot in high school, and I was playing at a really high level. I don't consider myself a high-level trumpet player in the city of New Orleans because there's so many great guys. Yeah. But I do consider myself to be a high-level entertainer. I understand a room and how an event can transform with a musical experience.
Absolutely.
And I'm part of that. And I think that there's a real value to that, more so than the value of me picking up my horn and playing. I would say as an entertainer, I feel like I'm playing at a pretty high level right now. That's a good question, though. I like that question.
Yeah. Do you have are you booked more now? Is there more demand for you now than ever before? Or do you feel like the band kind of goes through ups and downs in terms of bookings?
Yeah, there's a seasonal fluctuation in the city of New Orleans based upon whether it's festival season or it's always wedding season.
More like years.
Oh, yearly? Yeah.
5 years ago we were the most in demand we ever were.
Okay.
Or how many people you turning down, stuff like that. Or has it just been you hit a certain point at some year and it's been steady since?
Yeah, well, we've been at a really good volume now for, I would say 10 years. And I would say 10 years ago, we were playing at a higher volume.
Right.
We were more creating a brand for ourselves. Okay. So we were accepting a lot of jobs that we no longer accept. And whether that be a bar job or a weekday convention job that doesn't quite work for us, or right. A fair. We went from playing almost every fair locally to now we kind of cherry pick the ones that serve us best and the one that we feel that we're contributing.
Or you might have a connection
most.
with, or
exactly.
something. Or like your friend being like, "Hey, I'm running this fair. Can you guys?"
Exactly.
Right.
So the volume of our gigs, probably at a peak when I was in dental school, might have been 120 a year, which is a lot. That's 3, 4, 5 gigs a week. That's playing on weekdays. And then now we're probably in the 80 to 100 mark.
So about a little bit less than 2 a weekend.
Yeah, that's right.
That works. Do you have any rules where the guys can take a break one weekend and you get a sub or something like that, or?
Yeah, so we're really big. We recognized a couple of years ago that the demand could grow unlimited.
Right.
And some of the other bands were doing some things where they were cutting bands and having an A segment, a B segment, and kind of diluting their product. Right. And I just didn't think that was a very positive, or I didn't like the integrity of that.
Right.
So we all sat down and we said, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make sure we all have a backup, because you never can, unexpected emergency, illness,
even
whatever.
For you.
Even for me.
Okay.
Everyone has a backup, a go-to backup. And then the second thing was that we would never have more than 2 backups on any one performance at a time.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
Because we want that Bucktown experience to be the Bucktown. And we take pride in that experience and making sure people get that experience and that it's repeatable and that we control that. I think if we bring in too many other guys and try to expand too much, then you lose that. It gets diluted and you miss out on some things.
What is the best gig you ever performed?
Ooh. It's hard to say because we've played some really wow gigs. We've played a number of gigs, more than a dozen for the New Orleans Saints and the Pelicans. Right. And that includes not only for big stage events like Champion Square, prior to the playoff game against, I believe it was the Cardinals when we advanced.
2009.
Yeah, that was a big game. The energy of that was big. We've played in the Superdome for the Indian Extravaganza.
Which is a gig, maybe I'm saying it wrong, where you finished and you were like, guys, holy shit, that was amazing.
I think it depends on who you ask in the band.
Really?
Yeah. So, I'm trying to think of a good story. I mean, there's times where we played a pre-Super Bowl party when the Patriots played the Rams in the Dome for the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It was
2001.
Yes. Post 9/11. Security to get in the Dome with band equipment was a nightmare. I think we started that morning at like 9 a.m. doing equipment checks, background checks, security checks, setup, all that stuff.
For a 5:30 p.m. game.
Yeah. And our gig was with probably a now defunct tech company. It was in one of the lounges. It was not an especially big gig. There was maybe 200 people in the room, if I can remember, 2 to 250. And we were there just playing. Well, the MC was Joe Theismann. So all night, we are all pregame. We're hanging out, playing, and he's a huge music lover. Yeah. So he's like, can y'all play Soul Man? And I'm like, yeah, we could play Soul Man. So then Joe Theismann singing Soul Man with us. And then at pre-Super Bowl at these VIP parties, the athletes that are not playing are comped or paid to make these visits. So anyone who's not playing, current athletes or former athletes like Mean Joe Green, former quarterbacks, you name it, are basically mingling in this room. And so we're cutting up and we think this is really cool. Well, then at the end of the night, again, a tech company, they say, right as we're rounding up and the thing's coming to, they're releasing confetti and go team. And we want to reward our 10 highest sellers for the year. And they said, Bob Smith from Indiana, stand up, Bob Smith. And Joe Theismann takes a football and rips it across the room to a computer guy. Yeah, he can't catch the ball. So it's bouncing off the hands. And they called out 10 people, and Joe Theismann is just ripping balls across the room. So that was one of those experiences where we're like, holy crap, that just happened.
That just happened.
Right. LL Cool J walked in the room while we're playing, and he's like nodding to us. That was a cool experience. I remember the exact gig where Bucktown All-Stars took off is that we were playing, it was either a 60 or a 65th birthday party for the Queen of Soul, Irma Thomas, in the Hilton main room. And they were basically looking for fillers to come and play, to get the crowd engaged all night. And they called these young guys. We had been out a couple of years playing. We loved the Bucktown All-Stars to come play. You're all going to play 3 songs.
Right.
And I can't remember who was before us. I can't remember who was after us. But I know when we took the stage and played that night that the people in the audience were not expecting to see both the energy and the sound.
Right.
And that performance, those 3 songs, we walked off the stage, grabbed our equipment, went to exit, and people were literally grabbing us to ask for cards, ask for this. When are y'all playing next? And that was truly a launching point because there was a who's who of politicians, business owners, musicians in that huge ballroom, and we just lit it up for 3 songs. And that was 20 years ago.
Right now, like your catalog of songs, how many do you think you guys just know off the top of your head?
400 to 500.
So if you're prepping for a new gig, do you like take out music and learn some new songs? Or is there like maybe by year or by season, like, hey guys, we're going to learn these like 10 new songs
by season.
Put them in?
Yeah, so we know festival season's coming up. We're going to be big outdoor prepping for French Quarter Fest right now. So we need to have 3 or 4 new, fresh, big stage songs. It doesn't have to be a new song.
Right.
It has to be fresh to our sound.
You might do some Lizzo.
We might do some Lizzo. We actually did work up a horn arrangement of Lizzo.
I like it. I like it.
It was fun.
Can we play that for Toth?
We're trying to figure out how to work it in.
Too late to play that for Toth. Yeah. So, last thing for the band question. What was your worst gig where you're like, oh my God, thank God we got out of there? Or like, that was awful. It doesn't necessarily have to be like where y'all bombed.
Yeah.
Not saying that y'all bombed. But, like, it could have just been, like, the environment or, like, God, what were we thinking booking this?
There were 2. One of them that made us, as we played a very small Loyola or Tulane fraternity party. And we didn't know what we were getting into.
Shit. That sounds terrible. Just tell me.
We showed up, and we weren't what they were expecting.
What were they expecting?
I don't know. But we showed up, and we're playing classic soul, and they're a bunch of drunk guys. I don't even think there was a girl at the place. There was maybe 14 guys in the room sitting, angrily drinking beer, looking at us.
They're ready to fight.
They didn't want to pay us at the end of the night. So that was bad. But those rooms are that shapes you when you play. Because now I can play in front of anybody, and it doesn't bother me. The other one, and I laugh about it to this day, is we played a New Year's Eve gig at Chateau Country Club in the late 90s. It was one of our first
That's when Kenner was popping.
When Kenner was popping. It was one of our first big New Year's Eve gigs. We had probably played, I can remember our first, but it was our first big one. And so this would have probably been, this would have been mid-90s. And we were in the big room at Chateau Country Club. There was another band, and an older band,
right,
that we had kind of followed in their footsteps a little bit, played in the smaller room. And little did we know that the tickets sold that night were mainly to an older crowd. So we show up, we feel great. We're playing in this big room. It's all set up for this great party. New Year's Eve. It's going to be an amazing night.
We're gonna rock this place.
And everyone chose to go in the other room because it was their age group. So we played to an empty room. And the name of that band was Kings Row. Some of those guys I still know and still respect. I don't think they play anymore.
What do you do in that situation? Do you just guys, let's just get lit and nail this. Okay, this is for us.
We kept grinding, but at the end of that night, a couple of guys were ready to throw in the towel. They were like, "We're done. Like we just got outplayed by a bunch of older guys."
Yeah.
And so to this day, if we ever play a room or an event where people are exiting for whatever the reason, I always say, "Oh, King's Row must be playing in the other room," because every once in a while, just because of the timing of something. Right. I mean, we've played parties where they've staged a Mardi Gras parade outside of a convention. So we're playing in a room, and they hear there's a Mardi Gras parade going on outside with bands. So everyone turns their back and leaves. But that was probably one that stung, but stung in a good way.
Right. So I mentioned earlier, you're a dentist.
Yes.
How rough was it preparing or going to dental school and preparing to become a dentist, studying all that stuff while you were in the band?
Yeah, and that goes back to timing too, because that's when we peaked in volume. So we were playing a lot back then. Sophomore year, dental school was pretty tough. Dental school, unlike some other professional schools.
Your last year's the easiest year, right?
Right.
Yeah.
As far as commitment.
Right.
But the first couple of years, they take roll. There's, you have to be in class. You can't ditch all this stuff. So the hours were tough then, but it really taught me how to balance and prioritize. I didn't have all week to plan for a test because I had a couple of gigs. There were times where I was playing on stage until 1 a.m. and then
how old are you right now? 24?
Yeah, 24. Yeah, at the time it was 24.
Yeah, at the time, yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's crazy to me. So you talk about you had to learn how to, I guess, prepare in advance, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like that's not a skill a lot of people have until they hit 30 or 35 or 30,
how to
40.
prioritize.
How to prioritize that far in advance. So that's pretty awesome. I also have a friend of mine, shout out to Paul Perez. He'll be marching with us in Toth.
Nice.
He was in the Tiger Band as well. He finished dental school, and maybe it's a thing about dentists. I don't know. But he was always way far in advance.
Is he married to Ishi?
Yes. Yeah, he's married to Ishi.
A great couple.
Yeah. Awesome.
Great
he just
couple.
opened up that new dental clinic.
On magazine. I walked by yesterday. It's gorgeous.
Yes, beautiful. I feel like he spent over a year, maybe 2 years building that. So that's what happens when you build in New Orleans. But anyway, I feel like he always had those qualities as well. And maybe it's just a thing about dentists. I don't know. That's what makes you guys unique. I'm not sure.
We have to be highly organized and stay organized. And I think balancing the music career, and at that time it was a career. It was a full-on career. I mean, I probably could have played music full-time. But it was a balance between dental school, which was a 9 to 5 commitment, 5 days a week, and then playing full-time music at that time, 3 to 4 times a week. It was tough. And that's when I met my wife, too. So,
right. In dental school?
In dental school. Second-year dental student. I refused to date anyone that was in dental school or affiliated with dental school.
Right.
And I met her, and she said, "You don't have time for a girlfriend. You're in dental school. You're in this band." I was like, "Sure, I got time." Hey, I got time. So I lied to her and said, "It's never going to get more busy than it is right now. This is it."
Right.
And it did. It got a little busier, and her patience was tested a couple of times. But yeah, we made it through. We're still together all these years later.
So how many? You have 2 kids, right?
2 kids, yeah.
How old are they?
17 and 16.
17 and 16. Good God. Yeah. So, they're getting ready to start college.
Yeah.
Any idea where they want to go?
Ella, my oldest, wants to travel. She wants to go away. So she likes. She's visited the North Carolina, Virginia, Wake Forest area. Mm-hmm. And then she went over and visited the West Coast. She went to San Diego University, and then she went to Loyola Marymount and USC. She liked the vibe of the West Coast.
Yeah.
She liked.
How can you not?
I know.
How can you
I
not?
know. And then she's been over there enough times through travel, visiting friends, that she's been exposed to, Southern California and San Francisco and Central Coast. But she also likes. There's a really just an entrepreneurial spirit there,
Right.
and it's palpable.
Yeah.
And when you travel the campuses there, what they do is they talk about how much of an influx of talent, guidance
Right.
that they have from all the companies that are launching on the West Coast. And that's a real big selling point if she wants to go into business.
Yeah.
So she's touring a campus, and they say, oh yeah, well, some Google execs come in and give this course, or we send people to Google, we send people here, we send people there.
How much do you think she's gotten that from you?
She would probably say 0.
Right.
Kids. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I think I think a good bit.
Mhm.
I don't know if she would recognize that now.
Right.
But
Maybe 5 years from now.
Yeah, a couple of years from now.
Do you think, was there any point where you're like, man, like I could just crush this with the band and not be a dentist, or do you just always want to be a dentist? Or balance the two?
Yeah, I've liked the balance from the beginning. There was a time in dentistry where I reached that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I was challenged by a couple of peers, a mentor, and my father-in-law, who said, look, Ryan, you're doing exceptionally well.
Right.
You grow in your business. Your brand is on the launching point. And if you invested yourself fully in this, we have no doubt that you could exponentially grow.
In terms of your clinic?
In terms of the clinic, the dental services,
Right,
what I was doing. I was building out a new dental office, and the footprint of that was not especially large. It was to fit me. And I thought about that for a while, and enough people had asked me, and enough of my clients had asked me, they recognized how much I enjoy music.
Right.
And ultimately, I decided that to me, it was more important to have the balance than it was to focus on one particular thing exceptional.
That's
it was
tremendous.
Now, I don't think by any means I'm an average dentist.
Right.
As far as my skill set, right? So, and there are some things that played a role in that early on. I had some skills that allowed me to thrive, technically speaking, like when
you've always enjoyed it.
I've always enjoyed it. But I joke with dentists. I say, as a dentist, you can make as much money as you want to make.
Right.
You really can. How much do you need, and how much do you want to work?
Right.
If you don't figure that out,
yes,
then someone else is going to figure it out for you, or you're going to have a medical issue before you figure it out. So,
because depression can be high.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The burnout. It's an intense, physical.
You take Fridays off, right?
I take Fridays off.
Good.
Yep. And I've dabbled with that. I've been off Fridays a long time. There was a time post-Katrina where I was off on Mondays. I've scaled it down and expanded it and brought on associates, and then worked the associate out. And I've worked in a couple of different models to try to figure the sweet spot. Mm-hmm. And I'm still working on it. Hadn't figured it out yet.
So, believe it or not, guys, this is a health and fitness podcast. We've just been talking about a bunch of other bullshit up until this point. But, I just want to touch on that a little bit, because I've always heard that dental health is a good indicator for the rest of your body. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, I think it's a reflection. The state of your mouth is a reflection of the rest of your body. So the change that's going on internally in medicine is that we are coming, there's a lot more research and a lot more clarity as to the importance of the digestive tract.
Right.
You can pick up now a muscle and fitness magazine. You can pick up a bicycle magazine. You could pick up a People or Oprah magazine, and it'll talk about nutrition. It'll talk about absorption. It'll talk about vitamins. It'll talk about a vegan aspect of lifestyle.
Right.
However, how you absorb whatever you're putting into your body plays a key role. So if there's a sign of inflammation or infection in someone's mouth, it's usually reflective of a bigger picture. Mm-hmm. That might be diabetes. That might be a chronic infection elsewhere in the body. That might be cancer.
Right.
So having a healthy mouth is the starting point of having a healthy body. One of my dear friends who lives in North Carolina, who happens to be a geneticist, recently suffered some medical setbacks where he had to go, for a time being, he had a section of his colon removed because there was some issues there.
Yeah.
And he had to be tube fed. And I went to spend some time with him, a week with him while he was just getting out of hospital, getting recovered. And he's being fed through a tube, not through his mouth, but through a central line, essentially. And I saw what was going into him. It was listed on a label on the back.
Yeah.
And it was, depending on his weight and what he was getting over, it was the perfect mix of proteins, fats, vitamins, everything. Perfect mix going in centrally into his central line. 24 hours. It was regulated through a pump. It was mechanized. He didn't have to do anything.
Right.
Yet he was pale. He was losing weight, a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
He was not recovering from his surgery. In other words, the wounds weren't healing. And I came home and I started talking with my wife, who's an oncology nurse, and I started talking with my father-in-law, who's a surgeon. Right. And I started just exploring a little more. And what was being bypassed was, yes, he was getting all of that stuff, but none of that was being digested. So it was bypassing his GI tract.
Right. That's interesting.
And he was losing weight.
I imagine the caloric intake is tiny on that too.
Yeah. But they were balancing it all, which was interesting.
Right.
You know, they were feeding him the nutrients that were necessary to make him heal and get better, yet he wasn't, because it wasn't going through his GI tract. It wasn't going through his mouth. It wasn't going, so the absorption was completely different. And that was like a light bulb for me. I was like, wow, how important is that?
I got a question for you, because this has always been my assumption, and I bring it up to every dentist I ever talk to. Yeah. But if you had to choose in terms of teeth health, okay, between flossing or not eating sugar, what would you say?
Not eating sugar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. Because I rarely floss. Sorry, I need to. I probably should. My wife flosses all the time.
Yeah.
You don't need to get on me about that right now. But I don't eat a lot of sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So consequently, my cavities have almost been non-existent for years.
Yeah.
And it was, I probably had 4 or 5, but it was all from when my diet was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I switched my diet, 6, 7, 8 years ago, it almost stopped.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So when we see a lot of young patients starting at 1.5, even 1 at Storyville, and one of the first conversations I have with every parent, even before the baby is born, is about nutrition.
Yeah.
Because I tell them, and I use hand signals because I want it to register. I'd say the 2 biggest causes of cavities in this age, and when I'm talking about this age, I'm talking about walking probably until about the age of 10, is high sugar liquids, and that includes obvious things like juices and sodas.
It's a big one that parents always forget about, is juice is not good for your kids.
It's not, and it's highly concentrated, and if it's in a form like a box or a pouch where you can't dilute it, then you're just bathing your mouths in sugar. And the second one, so the first is high sugar, the second is sticky candies or fruits. So I tell them, if I have the option, in one hand I have 3 M&Ms, in the other hand I have 2 gummy bears, give me the 3 M&Ms. Because they're going to dissolve, and the chocolate's going to go away. Within 5 to 10 minutes, you'll have no chocolate, whereas the gummies will stick in your teeth. So give me a scoop of ice cream or a spoon of ice cream in one hand, or give me a cinnamon roll in the other hand. I'll take the scoop of ice cream. I'll take 2 scoops of ice cream over 2 bites of cinnamon roll, because the cinnamon roll is sticky. It's going to gum into the teeth. So the doughy bread is going to stick there. It's going to stick between the teeth. So if I start that nutrition conversation early, which I always do, the percentage of our pediatric patients who have cavities, who follow those 2 simple rules and aren't flossing, most young children aren't flossing, very low cavity occurrence, very low. And if they do, I can usually, as I'm having the conversation, the parent will nod, because their wheels are turning and they're registering.
I've never heard that before, but that makes total sense. Yeah. And that's great advice for everybody here on the show. So
the sticky sugar, high sugar fruits, veggies, not so much veggies, but definitely fruits and candies, and then the liquids.
Any other tips that would not be normal that you'd want to give to everybody?
It doesn't matter what you put on your toothbrush. Doesn't matter. You can have a wet toothbrush
It's basically the act of brushing.
It's the physical act of brushing. Because I get asked that all the time. What toothpaste is? Can I use this? Can I use charcoal? Can I use this?
So that Oxident is just a racket, huh?
It's just a racket.
It's like $10 a tube.
It doesn't matter. And in fact, as I'm telling parents about brushing their children, one of the biggest things that they don't like the taste, or they gag or spit or whatever, I said, well, don't put anything on the toothbrush. Just have it be wet. Even if they're chewing on a wet toothbrush, the mechanical action of the bristle around the tooth is removing the film that collects the bacteria.
There you go, guys. That's awesome. So I touched on it a little earlier. You're an endurance athlete. When did you kind of get into that?
I call myself a recreational endurance athlete. I'm not competitive. I'm not a competitive person. If you said, Ryan, I can run around this building in 20 seconds, I would say, that's awesome.
Good for you.
Good for you.
Right.
And so I competed when my kids were young. I was doing, that's when triathlon was just kind of getting big to the everyday person. People were, you'd start to see pop-up bike shops would start carrying triathlon gear. This was, 12, 15 years ago. And I was doing some triathlon, mainly sprint and Olympic distance, because that's what fit into my lifestyle. I couldn't train for the longer stuff. I peaked when the kids, when I was 30, I was doing two half Ironmans. That year that I was 30. Mm-hmm. And then I just recognized that two things. One, the schedule of the training didn't work for me.
Right.
And the other thing was the accumulation of the wear and tear required for that many miles was damaging to my body. I couldn't recover fast enough. So then I became recreational, and people say, what are you training for? And I say I trained for my sanity. So if you see me out running, I'm probably running a long distance, or if I'm riding, I'm probably riding with some intensity, not because I have a race in 2 months, but just because I know
you do it for yourself.
I do it for myself.
And I think that's like one of the most important things. And what I try to do, is you don't really weight lift. We talked about it. You do a lot of body weight stuff. And then my last guest that I had on, she doesn't weight lift either. So neither of y'all go to RU. You're not at the functional fitness group classes. But I think it's important when we listen to you speak and listen to her speak about their fitness is that you find something that you enjoy and you want to do for yourself. And I think that's the most important aspect to exercising.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't try to force something on yourself that you don't enjoy, because then you won't do it.
Yeah. So the question that I like to ask friends or clients is, what kind of dog are you, or what kind of car are you? Mm-hmm. Because I think it makes it less, it depersonalizes it, and it doesn't offend as easily.
Right.
So if I look at a good friend of mine who's big and thick and big boned and big hands, and I tell him, you're a Mack truck. You're not going to run a marathon without your knees really killing you, or you getting fasciitis or something like that. And then I had to come to the realization that I wasn't a Mack truck.
Right.
And that my attempts to put muscle mass on my body took so much effort. I mean, we're talking about eating a ton of protein, supplements, workouts that were not fun because they were not fitted to my natural state. So the sooner I recognized that I was closer to a field work dog that could run all day, not super fast, but I can run all day and herd sheep all day.
Right.
Don't hook me up to a sled and ask me to pull the sled, because I can't do that.
Right.
Don't ask me to fetch repeatedly, because I'll get bored. But if you put me in a field with a bunch of dogs and let me run around and play and bark and sprint and then slow down and lay down and recover, I can do that all day. So I ask people that. I was like, what kind of dog are you? And I think that's an important question to ask people when it comes to their career. Because some people choose a career path that's not fitted to either their personality or their physical makeup.
Yeah.
And then they become trapped by, oh man, I've been at this desk all day and I just wanted to be outside doing X, Y, Z.
Well, that's kind of why I started this gym and I talk about it all the time, where I was in the hotel industry, and then I switched to this. But it was because I realized, like, I would never be a good employee.
Amen.
I just wouldn't. Like, I need to be able to make decisions for myself. I like to start things, create things, and there was no real specific job that would allow me to do all those things, and so I had to create a job that allowed me to do
multiple jobs.
Yeah,
right. And
even still, with owning this gym, there's lulls with this where I'm like, I got to do something stupid, so I started different. So I started the podcast, or I got to create something new, and a lot of times Emily has to like say, calm down, slow down. No thanks. But I'm a starter. She's my finisher. That's how we work well together. But yeah, I mean, find something that suits you, suits your personality, suits your lifestyle.
Yeah. And for me, the workouts. So I think we all go through a phase in our life where the workouts are ego based, right?
No,
I don't
absolutely.
mean ego in an offensive way.
No. I mean, look, I spent time here at this gym or in my CrossFit life where there was a time where I felt I needed to beat everybody.
Yes.
Like I felt
I've been on the bike like that,
right?
Yeah.
And now, I mean, it happened in the last year or two where I'm just like, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Like, what am I fooling?
Yeah, that's a cool spot.
That's silly.
Right.
And so now I just work out for myself.
Yeah.
But everyone comes to this, and some people struggle with finding the motivation to keep going because like, oh, my motivation was to win. And now my motivation is different. Yeah. And not a lot of people are great at transitioning to that. Yeah. But I always try to tell people like, look, take a step back. Think about why you work out or why you started in the first place. Because I guarantee when you started in the first place, it wasn't to win. Mm-hmm. That kind of transition to that. And then just make sure that the way you work out suits your motivation.
Right. It feeds it.
Yeah.
Feeds it and doesn't knock it down. Yeah, like I get fed by the moderate soreness I have in my legs a day after a run, or the fact that when I go to run up some stairs and I rode hard 2 days prior that I'm still a little achy. I mean, that feeds me. It doesn't beat me down. It definitely feeds me.
I mean, generally my goal is I want to do some form of exercise every single day for at least 35 minutes. And that doesn't always happen, but that's my goal. So if I destroy myself one day, the next day I can't do it.
Exactly.
And then I'm missing out on my goal. My goal was to work out every day. What was that extra 20 minutes of high intensity the day before just ruined my next day of work.
Right. Yep. And it's amazing how simple it is to get that 20 to 30 minutes in.
Yeah.
If you, it really is.
So we were talking about balance earlier. You're in an incredibly popular band. You're creating a marching group for a Mardi Gras parade, and you run a dental practice. You have 2 kids and a wife. So, and you do endurance recreationally. How do you balance all that?
I think it's an exercise, right? So it's not something that I figure out and then, I'll figure that out and I'm good for the next, for 2020. Like it's truly an exercise. I sit in the morning and kind of sit still for a little bit. I get some meditation in. I read a little. Well, first I read with some positive words. It's not spiritual in any way. It's just some positive words, and then I sit for a little bit, and then I have my intentions written down, and that allows me to keep my priorities where they need to be. And that exercise kind of guides me through my day. So where things come at me that maybe they're a good opportunity or maybe they could serve someone in some kind of way, if it's not in my priority list, I'm more critical of taking that on.
Right.
It's become easier for me to say no.
Yeah.
And I know you've experienced this too. The more success you have, more people come at you, but they also appreciate that you're good at what you do.
Right.
And they almost, while it brings people into you, it creates a little bit of a filter or screen.
Absolutely.
So you don't get bombarded with all that stuff. So I think I would answer your question by saying it's an exercise, just like you were to go into your CrossFit work and look at what, the workout of the day is and see where the focus is going to be. I kind of do that with my day mentally, in the morning. Almost every day, and I carry it in my calendar in the back, my back pocket.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love that you do that. It's kind of like you have to schedule out your intentions.
Absolutely, because stuff will fill. Other people's urgency will fill.
Well, I know you got to get out of here. We got a busy day, guys.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah. Go ahead. Anything you want.
I'm so happy I met you.
I am. Ryan.
Look, the other thing I wanted to say is that, and this is something that came to me recently, is that when you talked about putting it all together, is coming to terms with success versus significance. Yeah. And you touched on this. not to diminish it, but anyone can be successful because success is nothing more than achieving a goal. So set a goal, focus on it, high or low. If you hit it, you're successful.
Right.
Significance is more about having an impact on others, having the energy that you carry energize other people, not only around you, but maybe for multiple generations. And I think that once you've achieved a certain level of success, then the next step is to get to where you have that significance to where you're making an impact on people's lives. And you certainly do that here with your gym and your podcast. And that's kind of one of the things that I folks do. And I think that we do with Tiger Ragtag.
Absolutely.
One of the most powerful things that Brett Patrone said with the 6 Inch Stompers is when we were talking about the pros and cons and all the work involved in putting this thing together for Mardi Gras, and he said, Ryan, don't underestimate how much this lights other people up.
I was about to say that, is that the whole reason I got started, that's never mind. But when I was doing Tiger Band, my greatest joy came from the joy that other people were experiencing from hearing us.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when we did Tiger Ragtag before the national championship, seeing other people like light up because here we are playing some LSU songs, and it's going to be the same thing when we're in the parade.
Oh, it's going to be amazing.
An unbelievable experience. And I think that if you're in the business of making other people feel good, you're in a good place.
That's right. Amen.
So, where can people find you on social media?
I am at Dr. Boss Floss on Instagram.
Oh, shit.
You mentioned flossing.
Boss Floss.
Yeah. I don't do Twitter. I do Facebook a little bit once a week or so. The band is Bucktown All-Stars. BucktownAllStars.com. StoryvilleDental.com is our website.
Right over on Causeway, y'all.
Yeah.
5 minutes from the gym. So awesome, y'all. Make sure to like and subscribe to our podcast. Rue Fitness is on iTunes and Spotify. We'd love it if you gave us a review and a 5-star rating. So we'll end on that. Happy Mardi Gras, y'all. Peace out.
Mardi Gras.
Holler.